Hey guys, Opt.Gamer 21 here for a Christmas special and my 3-year anniversary on my YouTube channel. I know it is around Christmas time, and by the time you guys watch this video, it will probably be on Christmas Day, this 25th of course, so I'm going to go ahead and wish you guys a Merry Christmas. Hopefully you guys have had a wonderful Christmas thus far. Hopefully you guys are having a good New Year, and if you're on a break, then hopefully your break or vacation is going really good. And let's go ahead and get into the video.
Welcome to my
So I want to give you guys a little bit of a gift that I probably should have given you guys 6 months ago, but I didn't, and I do regret it to an extent. So I do apologize for the wait, but even so, that's why we're doing this today. To start off with, we need to go back to February, because that's when things started taking a turn. For many of you who have known me for a while, you probably know that I went to Washington, D.C. You probably know that I've shared some of those images, including a picture of the Capitol of the United States, which I've shown off in quite a few of my streams, and even had on my computer for quite a while as a background. Well, right around that time was when things turned. I'd say mid-January was when the thoughts started coming to mind, but they didn't affect me yet. The trip was the last week of February, roughly, right around that time. And when I got back is when the thoughts really started actually affecting me. Being gone that week, I also missed a week of school, so that meant I had to get 8 classes worth of work done, basically. I had to do those 8 classes of work, right? And I had about half the time to do it. Although I did get it done, it did require quite a bit of time, work, and effort, and it did require going in for classes before and after school, and even at lunch for some of them. Of course, that's not all of them, because obviously teachers aren't always there. And even doing that, I still ended up not doing as well as I probably could have had I not gone. However, it was a great opportunity, and it was a lot of first things to ever happen to me, and it was a good thing to learn and like get a handle on, because like sure, I've gone places without anyone, but I haven't really gone out of my hometown or anything like that, so that's why I'm not going to complain too much. But on the other hand, it did affect how I was on school. So even though I did get caught back up, I still struggled to understand everything, and it would take me a week to understand the current material. I'd understand that material, and then the following week I'd have to take an extra week to understand that material. So basically I was a week behind in my understanding of the material, even if I did complete it. And that's kind of a big issue, because it started leading to my grades decreasing. And it wasn't quite yet. It's probably another month before I actually started on this, but I actually started labeling myself with my grades, because I usually had really good grades. I didn't have to worry about it. But then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I got to worry about it. I'm here worrying about getting the work done and getting it done well, but then I'm really almost doing it more for the grade than the work itself. And I suppose in a way I could actually admit that there were a couple of times that I completed an assignment to complete it, not to actually learn it. Not always, not even close to always, but there were, I think I can honestly say there was 2 or 3 assignments that I did have to do that on, just because of time. And I mean, it wasn't fun trying to figure everything out, but I mean, I tried, is the important thing, I suppose. Even so, that led to me having bigger struggles by the time April came along. By the time April came along, I was having lower test scores in quite a few of my classes, and I was also starting to lose interest in pretty much everything that I did, whether it be gaming, traveling, working on things like math and stuff like that. Like math and engineering and programming, I used to love those. I have not quit loving engineering, but I did quit enjoying pretty much everything else. And that was pretty much a sign that I had gone into a depression over the summer. So I never really thought that was possible, honestly, because I've loved math since elementary years. I've probably loved it since at least the 3rd grade, and maybe even sooner than that. I've pretty much always done well. I think 4th grade I had a C for a little while, but I was able to get that up. In homeschool, I even had higher grades like A's and B's. And for those of you who are from other places that don't use the letter grades, that's like an 80, or excuse me, an A is like a 90% to 100%, B is 80 to 90, C is 70 to 80, and so on and so forth until you get to F. And I mean, it is what it is, frankly. I did still have a pretty positive outlook still. I was still pretty confident. However, the stress and anxiety was really starting to get to me around the April time. And by the time school got out, I think it was last week of May that we got out, I completely lost interest in pretty much everything, literally. Like, anything I had even slightest interest in, I pretty much lost interest. Perfect example, I loved watching things like abandoned videos and all that stuff, and I kind of was even sick of doing that. So, I was still doing YouTube, though. I had some ideas for YouTube as well, like exploring an abandoned Safeway that's nearby, and exploring a tunnel that I know is somewhat close, I guess. But the Safeway, I kind of looked at doing it, but I never did. The tunnel, well, I'll get to that shortly. I'm not quite to where I want to discuss that yet. But like, basically it's all because of one thing that messed that up, but I want to come back to that. So, throughout my life, I suppose I have had hints of depression. However, I have not had depression. I've had a pretty good life, and, like, frankly, I'm being honest about that, too, because, like, one of my parents actually had a really quite rough life, and part of the reason I can pretty much say it's depression is because it's a lot worse than I'd experienced that I already knew was somewhat close to depression, and part of it, too, is that my symptoms, like losing interest in everything, and all the stress and anxiety and the worry and all the stuff, all this mess, it really does kind of match in with depression. And that's why I pretty much figured out I had by the end of this summer. Another thing actually I should just bring up, for example, is I went out of town with my parents to do something fun, right? Me and my parents went and did something fun, right? And I really didn't enjoy it that much. I mean, I tried to be happy, I tried to be positive about it, but I didn't enjoy it very much as I normally would. So, and then, I mean, sure, we've been doing it every year, but it's only once a year, so it's not like it's overdoing it. And like, I knew at that time that something was definitely wrong. I knew for sure at that time something was wrong. And that'll come to the summer when I figure out that I actually had depression. Golly, I can't words. So as I was kind of saying, before I quit YouTube, I did have some good ideas. I was wanting to do lots of exploration with these places, right? And I did a vlog, though, to see if it would even be possibly plausible, if you know what I'm saying. I did a vlog where I jogged to a Walmart, and I bought this webcam that's right here, and I bought 2 poster boards that are over here, so I could have a background behind me when I did the live streams and stuff like that, because, frankly, cabinets and all sorts of mess isn't such a pretty background, if you know what I'm saying. But, I mean, it worked. It wasn't a bad background, and if I wanted, I could always hang something back there and make it look pretty nice with, like, maybe a poster like these right here that I've drawn up. But, I mean, even would have minded having a green screen, but I just didn't have the setup for it. And after some experimentation, I would need a little more lighting that I just don't have at this time, and don't even really have a place for it at this time. So, even at that time too. So, that's kind of why I didn't do a green screen. That's why I did the poster boards instead. Even so, that's not the point of the video, but I'm saying that that's what I did on my vlog, and the vlog, I think it only got maybe 7 or 8 views, which that's less than the average I got when I had only like 10 subscribers. So I didn't do any more vlogging. I was like, okay, screw it. I'm not gonna do the cool stuff that at least I think is cool. I mean, some of you guys might think it's cool, but I don't know. I think some of you guys might not think so much of it because you guys expect me to do live streams of gaming rather than videos of going places. So it is what it is. And that is a partial thing that led to me deciding that I should not do YouTube anymore. That wasn't the only reason. However, that was one of the main reasons I switched to Mixer and Twitch. As for other reasons on that really quickly, YouTube was having lots of issues. There was lots of things like, I don't know, I can't even remember what sometimes. They removed videos and stuff from search results. They were marking things as spam that weren't spam and all sorts of mess and hooey and nonsense. Oh my golly, ugh. I didn't like it, so I decided that between not being very sufficient with getting the people into the live streams and videos, even live streams, I was struggling a little bit this year. So between struggling to do the live streams and the videos on YouTube and all the issues on YouTube, I decided to switch to Twitch and Mixer. And about the time I quit YouTube, our group actually started having lots of drama. One person was driving a wedge between all of us, and it wasn't pretty. It was a very miserable time, and that certainly did not help me as far as my depression went. I don't think it was a full-on depression yet before the summer, but by the time this drama all happened, it was a full-on depression for sure. So they drove a wedge between us and basically separated us for months. And the person that I'm talking about, I don't want to reveal gender or anything like that, doesn't deserve the embarrassment, but the person did remove roles from people who deserved the roles, and therefore I removed that person's roles, and that led to the person calling Rogue Angel and me calling Rogue Angel at the same time, both saying what exactly happened. And after that, I don't think the person cared for me too much anymore. I mean, so the person was already kind of acting weird around me, if you know what I mean. Like, the person be nice to me, however, there'd be the weird comments and stuff. And then when the person drove a wedge into us and I got angry at the person that kind of was really weird about stuff and didn't talk to me anymore. So I don't really care, to be honest, about that, but it is something to bring up. So that was all happening in June. It was like the last week of June I completely switched over to Twitch and Mixer, and I was doing daily dual streams using both Twitch and Mixer. I had a webcam, so I could do the face cam, right? You know, face cam, yeah. And I could do that, and it was great. Like, I gained followers quicker on them than I did on YouTube when I started. And didn't really do much Mixer before this. Like, I did a little bit Mixer, and sure, I did the 3 platform streams where I did YouTube, Twitch, and Mixer, but YouTube was still the main one at that time, and switching, I actually started having lots of success on there. However, there are a lot of reasons why I quit on there, and that was mainly because of a few things. First, last year, about the same time that I quit this year, I quit last year, and like, I didn't quit, but I basically put a pause for the cause, if you will, because I needed to focus on the work, and it definitely was important, considering that I was going to go to Washington, D.C. anyway. So I took a pause for the cause, and I think I might have done one thing during the Christmas, which is kind of what I'm doing this year. And then, I mean, yeah, it's crazy. But like I want to go back to this past summer. So the group would get driven apart, right? It kind of came back for a few days. Like, it wasn't like a completely broken apart yet, but it was kind of on the edge. The first week that I did streaming on Twitch and Mixer, and even a little bit of the second week we did a bunch of really nice group streams. They were tons of fun. We did like Forza, Minecraft, and then I think I did a GTA stream on my own, and like all that was pretty successful. I gained followers quick, like for real. In 2 weeks, I gained more than I grew in a month on YouTube and on followers on each platform individually too. Like on Twitch, I went from 15 to 25 in a month. I probably barely had 10. So maybe Twitch was about the same, but Mixer, I went from like 50 to 70 or something like that. It was crazy. So it was definitely more successful for me to be on there than on YouTube. But towards the time I was about to stop, I did some streams on my own because the group was completely broken apart at that point. It wasn't going to come back until about a month and a half or 2 months later, whenever it came back. And I did the streams on my own. People weren't coming in. I was still having people follow me, but they weren't coming in for the last 2 streams I did between the 8th and the 10th. I did not do one on the 9th. That was the day that we went and did something fun, and I didn't enjoy it. But that's okay. Even so, that's what I did. And yeah, I mean, I stopped after that because of a lot of reasons. So obviously I was depressed, so I was quitting because of that. I quit because of past summer. I wanted to do a similar thing and focus on the work. I actually quit on my own this time. I didn't have someone help me quit. Like stop, I should say. And like I didn't want to start something if it was going to become popular and I'd have to do it. I'd rather want to do it rather than have to. And if I have to because I have a lot of followers or something like that, it's going to tear up my school and everything, and I don't want that because this year is a little more important to me. So that's kind of why I ended up not doing that much. Like, I didn't stop Twitch and Mixer because I didn't enjoy it. I was actually enjoying it more than I enjoyed YouTube for a whole year. Like, I enjoyed Mixer and Twitch like I did maybe my 5th month of YouTube. I liked it. But it really was to do with the career for most part, and then also a little bit for other things as well, for why I stopped on Twitch and Mixer. And I'm glad I did to an extent, because this year is a lot harder. However, I feel like it wasn't necessarily the best choice, and I feel like I could have at least ended it better and smoother than I did end it. And that, like I said, I do apologize to you guys a little bit for that, because that's kind of an inappropriate end I brought to you guys. But this year, I started in a similar mood. Like, this school year, I started in a similar mood that I did about 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago. I started the year about the same. And the same being that I was really excited. Like, I was actually looking forward to going back to school. But within a month, I managed to well, rather, it turned into, I didn't really manage to, it turned into lots of stress and anxiety. So, like, I thought I was out of my depression, or almost out of it when I started, but within a month I realized I was still very, very deep in the depression. And, like, sure, I'm gonna say this real quick, because I don't want anyone nitpicking about this. Depression doesn't cause the bad grades, however, bad grades, like, if you're labeling yourself with bad grades and stuff and everything, and you're doing all this pain, then it can lead to depression if you're not careful and you don't manage it wisely. And that's something I kind of have learned. But even so, it continued to knock me back down, and I actually really got deep into a rut again. And it eventually led to a week where I literally did no work. Like, sure, I did the in-class work, but for the most part that was notes, and oftentimes I would shut down by the middle of the last class of the day. So I'd probably be barely paying attention for 3 classes or whatever, however many classes there are in a day, and it would be extremely stress-worthy, and it wasn't fun. I will say that. So, like, that really knocked me down, and that, like, I think it was about 4 weeks ago when this happened. That was the week that I didn't do really any work because I was stressed and anxious and depressed, and all these things just tearing down on my body. I couldn't really do much, and I almost, to an extent, I felt like I was alone. I mean, even deep down, I know I'm not alone, but I still got in my head that I was alone on this, and that there was no one else, and that the education system wasn't the thing that was potentially causing it, or at least playing a big role in it. And after watching probably what was around 10 or 15 hours of TED Talks, reading about 30 or 40 different web pages, and watching a few other videos, I figured out that not only am I not alone, it can be the education, that the education may even be part of the cause. And it's because of the way it's set up. They set it up so that you're basically being taught to take a test. And unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do about that. You can go into private school or something like that, but then it's still going to have those standardized tests and stuff like that that really tear you to shreds and stuff. So, there are other places, I should clarify, that obviously do have a better education system, but then their societies are a little more sustainable with it, if you know what I'm saying with that. And there's just not a lot that I can do. So I felt like I kind of realized that I couldn't do it. Like I realized that that wasn't necessarily my fault. That maybe partly it was my fault. There were things I could have done to avoid it, but I didn't know how to avoid it. So there's not much I can do. And that's why I won't complain about actually experiencing it, because it allows me to learn what to do. Even so, though, I felt powerless almost when I realized that there were issues with the education system. Like, sure, I realized there was issues, but I didn't realize how much of an issue it was until I felt that fall down. And after that fall down is when I understood why some students just don't do well in school. And there's just not much you can do. Like, you can do things like homeschool, you can do all sorts of stuff like that. And I mean, for me, homeschool was great. It kept me interested, and I enjoyed it, and it was good, even though I did have people who didn't know when to be quiet sometimes. Let's leave it at that. But it was definitely a good experience for me. But other people can't enjoy that, or can't handle that, just because it's not for them. They don't have it in them to do it. And to an extent, it almost seemed like a mistake to leave it, but to an extent it wasn't either, because I do have great friends and great people around me at my school. So, I mean, it really varies from person to person. The education system is set up to help everyone, not just some students, and because some students can't handle it, they end up just dealing with failure, and it sucks. But I didn't really fully understand what it was like to have to deal with failure until this year. Excuse me. I didn't really understand what that kind of failure was like until this year, when I had the depression and had the anxiety and had the stress and all these things beating down on me. And sure, I'm not saying that this is the first time I've had stress. I've had extreme amounts of stress in the past. But, like, this year was different in being that I had depression in addition. And that's kind of what kind of messed me up for this year. So I suppose that's a New Year's resolution for me, is to figure out, well, rather than figure out, but actually fix the issue and find different ways to get interested in it. even so, though, I want to continue. Is really during the last month, like I was saying. I was kind of saying about that week, right? Is during the last month, like November was when it really was bad, when all this stress and anxiety and depression was absolutely destroying me. I was almost having a hard time falling asleep sometimes because of it. I mean, I started imagining things that I imagined as a kid, just to bring me back. Like I like to get me to relax, because like that was like a happy place, and I don't think about it very often, but I had to try and get sleep and stuff sometimes, even just because of how much stress and anxiety had built up in me, and it didn't help that there were a couple times I really held it in, and this is why I'm kind of glad I actually didn't do a proper ending video, because I want to discuss this with you guys, and I wanted it to end on a happy note. So that's what I'm gonna do. So continuing, however, I want to expand a little bit on how the stress and stuff was impacting me over the last month, maybe 2 months actually. So I actually started making really weird shrieking noises and all sorts of weird noises that I hadn't made since a child. And like the noises, like I was more rather using my mouth to make different forms of songs, frankly, at that time, and like that wasn't what I was doing this time. This time I was just making them because that was my way to try and cope with the stress and pain and everything. And like it helped to an extent, but it also made me negative at the same time, so it didn't help a whole lot. And like I think I don't know what people thought about it. I mean, people thought I was weird for doing it, but then I'm frankly weird for doing YouTube. Oh man, I have to laugh at that a little bit. But like that was one of my attempts to cope. And there were even some mornings, like, aside from not being able to fall asleep here and there on some nights, there were some mornings I almost felt like I could stay in bed and not do anything. And there were some days I definitely felt like I could just leave school or not even go at all, just because of how much this all built up, all the depression and the stress and the anxiety is beating down on me. So I mean, wait, I don't know how else you would feel. You'd feel like you're trapped, probably. So that's kind of one of the things that I had to deal with and try to keep myself from doing. And I didn't get to the point of suicide, however, I was a little bit concerned how, like, I'm not saying I would commit suicide, but I'm bringing this up because I did have YouTube recommend videos for me that were about suicidal thoughts and all that stuff, which, believe me, there were some interesting ones, but that was a little bit farther than I intended to go with research and stuff like that, but it was nice to know info about that so I could avoid it. And like I wasn't there yet, but I feel like eventually if the pain had gotten worse, it would have come, and it wouldn't have been a pretty sight. However, like that kind of all led to the week where I did basically no work, and that's what happened. So it was kind of around that time that I started, like, after that week where I did no work is the next week. I pretty much used the week, at least whenever I wasn't in school, to do more research and see videos and stuff like that, and I actually kind of got hooked on short films about avoiding and preventing the suicidal thoughts and depression and anxiety and stress and the whole shebang. I watched a few TED Talks, of course, but I was more focused on the all the other short films and stuff like that. And whether they are real or fake, that made me realize that I'm not alone in this mess. Like, that's what really made me realize I'm not alone, and there's tons of other people who have to deal with it. And there's tons of people who have it worse, frankly. And some of them, they can't do anything because it's in their DNA, and it is what it is. But like this was definitely by far one of the first depressions I've experienced, because of how, like, I knew because of how different it was from the little hints and signs I saw in past years. they were nothing compared to what I had this year. And I suppose I didn't really understand what it was like until this year because of not really experiencing it before. So, although I should clarify that those videos weren't enough to completely end it. However, they were enough to make me realize that there was something more. That there is some other people that have it, and that there is something still to keep on going for, to keep chugging for. And that led to my most previous week of school, the last 3 days, actually, of school. That was only a half a week, and it's the last 3 days of the school year. I convinced myself that I could handle it, and I did. I mean, we were kicked out by a fire alarm for the end of the day, and I mean, I didn't get to turn something in, and I also found out that I lost it, but even so, I can restart, and it's not a big deal. And you know what? I got a whole I mean, maybe for some people this is nothing, but like I got 5 pages of an essay done in like an hour, maybe 2 hours. I think it's more like 2 hours. And I also did a complete and really well-written commercial for my media class I took this year, and it was really good. Like my teacher, even many of my my classmates, I should say, really liked it. So I mean, even though it's a silly product, it was still really good quality. So I definitely was able to push through it, and I actually put off that essay for 2 weeks. And that's not something I'm necessarily happy to admit, because I don't usually put essays off that much. I mean, sure, I'll put them off a little bit, but I usually am able to get them in on time or maybe a day late. And, like, I got it. I had to actually send it on email because of the fire alarm, too. But, I mean, I still got it in on time, which is the important thing. And, yeah, I mean, I don't know how it was for sure, but I mean, I'll find out soon enough. But that was enough to convince me to keep going. So now I want to go on to what can be done to avoid the depression and stuff. To live without stress is essentially to be insane, because without stress we don't have anything to keep us going. Same thing with all the other low mental illnesses and stuff like that. We need to experience all of them in some way or shape or form to keep going. However, we do need to be wary of them when they get really strong, and when they get strong enough, we need to make sure we get help. And it probably got to the point where I probably should have seen someone more than just just my normal everyday people, but I didn't. And I mean, I managed to pull through it. However, when it gets really worse, like really bad, you definitely should seek some help. And that's something that a lot of people who have anxiety, that have stress and depression, don't do. And that's what can lead to some of the suicidal thoughts and stuff. As for ourselves, we need to make sure we manage our lives before we manage anything else, whether that be work or school or play or whatever. We need to make sure we're getting our good stuff, and that's being getting good nights of sleep, getting the right food, getting the right amount of food, eating at the right time, and exercising and all that stuff. We need to make sure we put ourselves ahead of everything else. Continuing on that point, we definitely do need to make sure we are getting enough sleep, because that's what gives us our energy. And if we don't have enough energy, then we won't be able to do things like work and all that very well, and not as efficiently as we could if we got enough sleep. So definitely need to make sure we're getting enough sleep, whether it be you're an adult and you need 7 to 8, or if you're a teenager and you need more like 9 to 10 hours of sleep each night. So definitely need to do that if we want to try and improve our situation. For me, I don't think the energy drinks were an issue, because like I said earlier in the video, I already had pretty much kicked my addiction of them last year. I probably could have technically stopped last year, but I was trying to be really careful not to push myself to where I needed it, if you see my air quotes. Even though it might have played a role in how things went, I don't think it is a direct factor. As for other things, this is something I want to get to earlier. If we believe everything we see in here, then we can drastically change our thinking, and that's not always a good thing. I started watching videos from channels that really weren't trustworthy, and I didn't know they were untrustworthy at the time. I hadn't really done my homework on them, I suppose you could say, and like I was already on that depressed well, and watching those videos, like, it made me feel a little more positive, but it didn't really help me a lot, and it actually led me being more depressed. There's some that are probably okay, however, the others, like, here's the ones I'm saying are okay, the ones that are actually doing what they say they do. I watched those videos, and that kind of led to lots of chaos, because I took things a little with just a little more than a grain of salt, and that led to some not so good things, or not necessarily bad things, but not so good things, and that because I couldn't trust them, it kind of made me lose trust in everyone and everything. And like, sure, I still trusted my parents and stuff, but like my trust in pretty much everything went away for the most part, and it was partially a result of those, and that probably was a role in my depression. So that's why I'm bringing that up. And I'm not going to embarrass those channels. However, there's plenty of videos that do say about it, and I'm pretty sure I've liked videos that say about it, about how those channels are not good. So if you want to, you can dig in my liked videos and stuff. Not sure if you'll find it on that channel though, because I did actually use my bot account a lot after I quit YouTube. Okay, music. So that was something else that probably knocked me down a little bit, because I was listening to the same music this year that I was listening to a year and a half ago. And that was probably a little bit of a mistake, because when I tried listening to it at the start of the school year, I didn't really enjoy it. And when I tried listening to it sooner, I also didn't really enjoy it that much. Like, I liked it, sure, it's a good song and everything, but most of it I didn't enjoy, so I think I made a little bit of a mistake there, too, because I also was listening to a few songs anyway that were a little more on the sad or depressed side, if you know what I'm saying. And no, I'm not saying sadness and depression are the same thing. They are absolutely nowhere near close to each other, and how similar they are. But like, I was trying to listen to the same music, and I wasn't enjoying it, so it probably didn't help me any. May not have hurt me, but certainly didn't help me. And it helped me to also, in addition to watching all those short films and stuff, it helped me to listen to more uplifting and more positive pieces of music that have really positive attitude about things and positive mood and everything. And that was probably one of my mistakes, was listening to the music. At first, at least, that wasn't necessarily so positive. Or maybe it was positive, but it's more that I was sick of it. As for people, we need to be around people who actually care about how you're doing and what you're doing and stuff. So I'm not saying we don't need to be around the people that don't care. We do. It's great for socialization, great for social skills. However, we want to make sure we put more attention towards those who actually care, because they're going to be the ones that are there for you when things go bad for you. And there were two people that I kind of didn't realize were actually kind of a little bit more, like a little bit closer, and they kind of said, like they saw me in the hallway or something. They saw that something wasn't quite right. They could tell it by my face, and they asked, "Are you okay?" and stuff. And one of them was a teacher, so the teacher even was like, "Well, if you need help, you can talk to me, or you can go to someone specifically," right? So there's people in my life that do absolutely care. But one of the things that depression did to me was it made me feel like no one cared because no one really saw it. Like, some people probably did. I know one person definitely did. But a lot of people didn't really notice it, seemingly. And that didn't help me. It didn't hurt me necessarily, but it certainly didn't help me because it didn't give me a way to say anything about it. And that's kind of why I also started feeling like I was alone, because there was no one to talk to, really. I mean, sure, I could talk to my parents, but, like, sometimes it is kind of hard. Like, I think all of us can agree to that, even if you are a parent right now. I think we can all agree on that. And that's something that kind of happened when the drama happened in our group, too. Like, it drove the person drove the wedge between us, right? And Rogue Angel went to that person because of a struggle with kind of really letting go, I guess. But I mean, it is what it is. But there was definitely people there for him who probably would have been a little better choice. I'm not going to say he was wrong. He probably needed the experience. So if you're listening to this, don't judge me for saying that. Oh man. But for real though, we need to make sure we're around the positive people who actually care more than the ones who don't, but while also maintaining a little bit of interaction with those that don't care as much. And talking to them can really help you, for sure. So as for people who bring you down, this is actually something I spaced about until this minute. I had someone last year who really brought me down. I'm not going to name who or gender or anything like that because the kid doesn't deserve it. But the kid did bring me down really hard last year, and that I think that could be a partial cause, or at least some sort of role that played in my depression. And the kid brought me down because the kid talked about stuff that I didn't care about and most people don't care about, and the kid would yak on about for a whole class period, waste a whole period away, and it's not beneficial to me or that kid. And I got annoyed by it several times, and I tried to avoid the kid, but because the kid was in my class, there's not a lot of avoiding on that kid. And I don't, it's not necessarily that I don't like people who like to talk. However, I don't like it when people talk about stuff that, frankly, doesn't make a difference in daily life. Like, sometimes it's necessary. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing all the time. But, like, for real, if you're in class, the classwork is much more important than that thing that doesn't really matter to most people. And that thing that doesn't matter to most people, you can joke around about after school gets out. Or when class gets out, or whatever. Don't do it in the middle of class when you're supposed to be working instead. Especially if it's not related to the work at hand at all. Most of what the kids spoke to me about was stuff that didn't relate to the class at all. And that's what really got on my nerve. So definitely make sure, kind of going back to the other point, make sure you're around people who bring you up. And you don't have to be mean about it. But, like, maybe just try not to put your attention on those who bring you down. Put your attention more towards those who bring you up, because those are the people who are going to keep you positive and keep you doing well. And, like, when things do get rough, they'll be the ones to encourage you to keep going. So, I recommend going for the people, trying to be around the people, that are more positive the most, rather than those who bring you down. Obviously, you can't always avoid them, and like, you're gonna have to deal with interacting with people who bog you down hard, but it's better to try and focus your attention on the positive people over the people who are negative and or bringing you down. So that brings me to the next point, that negativity should be avoided at all cost. It's almost impossible to go without a negative thought. I think I can guarantee that at some point in all of our lives we have had at least one negative thought. And like it or not, that they do happen, but we should try to focus more on the positives rather than the negatives of things. We should look at how we're benefited, not how we're defeated. And we need to use that to our advantage so we can learn. That's how we learn, is by seeing what we can do better and seeing what we did well. Because what we did well, we do again, right? So, I mean, it's pretty logical, but we do need to make sure we're focusing more on the positivity, even though when it does sometimes get hard to remember to focus on that positivity. That also isn't to say we should stay stuck in the past. We definitely need to stay focused on the present and work towards our future. However, we should keep in mind the lessons of the past so we don't make the same mistakes again. And that, like, if you just study government, you'll find that mistakes are made over and over again, and it's often because it has to do with poor education and a history and stuff like that mistakes happen again. So definitely need to make sure we're focusing on positives. Definitely need to make sure we're focusing on the present, making the present better, set for a brighter tomorrow. Yeah. Somewhere I heard that. I don't know where, so don't ask me, but I heard that phrase somewhere and I love that phrase. So for those of you who are experiencing mental illness, do realize that you guys are not alone. We all have a bag of rocks, and I am using one of those short films I watched. We all have a bag of rocks that knocks us down sometimes, that pulls us back, that makes us feel like we can't go on, but we don't have to keep it that way. We can take that bag of rocks and take a rock out by talking to people. I'm using that metaphor because I like it a lot. And number two, it really is a great metaphor for how stress and anxiety affect us. Stress and anxiety bring us down. If you put a backpack of heavy rocks on your back, you're also going to be brought down. And that's why I'm using that metaphor for this video. Because if you talk to someone, you're essentially removing those rocks. Because those rocks are like the things that are bringing you down. So definitely good to talk to different people, and when things really get rough to where you feel like you absolutely can't handle it, you might want to actually get a little more help than just talking to some of your friends or something like that. So it definitely goes to say, make sure you're talking to the right people and make sure you're hanging around the right people. As for how to choose the right people, well, it's pretty much impossible to say who's truly the right person to be around, but you should try to be around the people who are more positive and stuff like that. So, realize though too that you can change things, that things don't have to be the same, that you do have control. You may not have control over certain things. It may even take you convincing your brain that you have control when you don't actually have control. But you do have control to an extent because you have control over your own actions. And if you can't control other things around you, then control your actions to cope with those issues. Obviously, education is one for me because it's caused all this stress and anxiety. And I'm having to modify my behavior so I can cope with it rather than try to fight it. And if you do something, let's say you fight it by not doing your assignments, that doesn't hurt the school really. Like, I mean, maybe if the whole school failed, but like, that would be hard to do. That would be a really hard thing to put forth, and it would be really just not really plausible to do. So it's better to find ways to cope with the issues rather than fight them. And I'm not saying if you have an issue you can't change it. What I'm saying is, if there's an issue that you can't change, then learn to cope with it. If there's an issue you can change it. So for those of you who are having a little bit of a hard time staying in the game, I know I was there. I recommend you talk to different people, and you talk to people who care. Ask people questions. Pretty much everyone has experienced some sort of illness or something mentally that has messed with them. Even if it's just stress and anxiety, something eventually bothers everyone. And talking to someone, even going online and using one of those forums, is a good way to talk to people who are familiar with your illness or your stress or your anxiety or whatever it may be. And that's actually something I did a little bit too towards the end of my difficulties. And sure, I still have the difficulty, however, I've figured out how to work around it a little bit better, especially with those last 3 days of the school year. So, I mean, here's the deal with sharing, though. Even if it means sharing your whole life, it may not be a bad idea, because getting things off your chest does relieve stress. And if you relieve stress, then you can much easier go to sleep at night and focus on your work and do well on your work. And that is one thing that in a way I learned the hard way. In a way I still kind of do. I mean, there are some things that are hard to talk about, but I mean, do what you can put into words if you have a hard time putting it into words. Just do the best you can, because everything somehow or another can be put into some sort of word or phrase or multiple phrases. So, as for trying to recover, it may require time and effort. It may require a lot of time and a lot of effort. And that could be just as simple as starting a small group in Discord. You can set up a Discord server really easily just by clicking a button and typing a name of your server. And then you can put your server stuff onto a website or something like that. There's lots of websites out there that do pretty good with getting people into your server if you share your link with them. And that's a good way to form a little group. Maybe you find a group of YouTubers who have a little bit of difficulty, and maybe you talk to them to see how they cope. It could be something as simple as that, or it could be maybe more complex, like starting to do community service. Community service is a great way to meet new people, and that's a great way to learn how other people cope. I mean, I'm involved with a little bit of community service, and in my club, well, not necessarily my specific club, but like in the club that I'm in, I know there is someone who has difficulties, and they're somewhat related to what I had in a way. And like, they'd be a good person to go to because they have a better idea, may have a better idea of how to cope with it. And that's kind of what I was getting at earlier. So here's the deal, though. I did get through the difficulty. So you know what? If I can do it, I know that you can do it. And I know for a fact that you can actually do it. It may be hard. It may be difficult. It may be very difficult to get through. However, everyone can get through it. I believe firmly that everyone can get through it somehow or another, even if it does require a lot of time and effort. And that's my word to you. You can do it, and you got this. You can get out of it, even if it means getting help.